Yo, it's time for the Undisputed GOAT podcast. Happy to be here with y'all tonight, man. We are back once again live. And look, I'm glad we back, man. Had to take a little bit of an R&R break, but we're finally here. Look, how y'all been, man?
I've been, I gotta say, man, yeah, well, I talked to y'all. I talked to, shout out PSP as well. Y'all know my situation, what's been going on as of late. Give love to, giving prayers, condolences, and all the love in the world. My dad's side of the family, we had some tragedy that kind of struck us a few days ago. So, took a little time away, but it's I think one thing we got to learn as far as like tragedy and losing loved ones is we always got to remember that at the end of the day they want you to keep living and keep striving and keep pushing regardless of what's going on. They don't want you to stop your life just because you know they're no longer with us. So definitely giving all love to my dad's side of my family. But though I can't complain where I'm at. I'm just grateful. Work has been going pretty good. Had a we had a at my actual job we had like an all-star meeting yesterday morning. I mean, like early, like I had to get up and be there at like 6 o'clock. But got awarded for my good work last year. So trying to keep going, want to try to keep that going as well. But hey, what I'm saying, as they say, the show must go on. So life is going all right. I can't complain. Hope y'all's is going well as well.
Flash, man.
Yeah, kind of rehashes, but yeah, I just been one. I was sick for a couple weeks, but then just doing the dad thing, and said my daughter's in her fourth year of hockey, and uh, that's a second full time job in and of itself. Up in tournaments and traveling, and so it's just it's a lot, but it's a lot of fun. Getting in fights with parents and other coaches, that's always yeah, over an 8-year-old hockey game. But that's that's I just want to point out the fact that I didn't start it. I didn't start it. That's it. That's it. I just may have called somebody some names, and then in response to somebody, being people running their mouths and stuff. But
Mm, mm, mm.
yeah, well, um, but other than that, life is pretty good. Work's going is very stressful, but in a good way, I guess. You know, trying to. I'm getting back. I'm back in the gym after being sick a couple weeks, and but trying to get the diet back under control, but still working out. So I'm doing all right. Okay, BRF. I'm sorry for all of us. I know all of us are sorry for your loss. Oh,
And let me tell you something. I'm definitely appreciative of that. Definitely appreciative. I'm definitely appreciative of that. But yeah, like I said, she was a she was a big part of my early like growing up. Like just I got a bunch of stories and all of the stuff. It's like yeah, just kind of save those from like off camera or whatnot. But you know what though? Hey, like I said, at the end of the day, the show got to keep going. We got to keep pushing. I think she'd want me to keep going no matter what. So at the end of the day, appreciate all the love, everyone. All y'all that's showing me loves and all this. So hey, I'm grateful, very grateful.
Yes, indeed. And look, take care of your people, show love to your people, and make sure that you show them love and care because that's all you have at the end of the day, man. That's all you have at the end of the day. So, rest in peace to Rondell Moore, um, former Atlanta Falcon, former Arizona Cardinal, things of that nature. Former great person, great man. Rest in peace to him. Make sure that you seek the help that you need. And when somebody comes to you for help, don't shame them and say man up or woman up. None of that bull jive. Actually be there for them. And you don't know what somebody fighting against, especially with all the nonsense that's going on in this world right about now, whether that be local, federal, or global. So a lot of stuff is going on in this world right about now. Don't blow it because you want to be an asshole. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I would rather hear your story than go to your funeral. All right. So if you got a story to tell me, come tell me, so I don't have to go to your funeral. Because two words can be the difference between somebody unaliving themselves and you saving somebody's life. Understand the responsibility that you have. Now that we have that out the way, let's get to the happy parts in life, like this NFL combine. And look, I can also say this was the fastest combine that I have ever seen. And it is the fastest, most the biggest combine that I've ever seen. And if you really look at it right about now, it was the fastest time for every position with the exception of cornerback, I believe. Let me pull up my Palm Pilot. Yes, defensive back, all time, first all time. Wide receivers, first all time. Running backs, first all time. Linebackers, first all time. Quarterback, second all time.
Quarterbacks was second.
Quarterbacks, not
Quarterbacks was second.
quarterbacks were second, not cornerbacks. Sorry about that to the audience out there. Tight ends, first all time. Defensive lineman, first all time. Offensive lineman, first all time. The funniest thing about the offensive line, the fastest offensive line that was in the combine ran a 4.9, and that was the center Logan Jones from the University of Iowa, from the Iowa Hawkeyes. That's amazing, ain't it?
That's crazy. That's
That's
crazy.
crazy. So with that being said, man, I'm loving what I'm seeing right about now, and I just love what I'm seeing right about now. I can't help but look in awe with admiration. And the biggest story, although the quarterback he ran, I think that the fastest quarterback ran a hold on, let me the fastest quarterback I think he came from the University of Arkansas was Taylor Green. He ran a 4.36.
Mm.
That wasn't even the biggest story of the combine. The biggest story of the combine was Sonny from Ohio
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sonny Styles, yeah.
State, and his brother. And
And his brother Lorenzo.
and the thing is, he got y'all seen his dad.
Good God. They showed that picture. I'm like, no goddamn wonder why they killed the combine. Look at his daddy.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's just he is a specimen. Looks like a municipal statue. Looks like a municipal statue, and I gotta admire that. That's the short of amazing, man. And like I said, for a quarter, usually when a quarterback runs a 4.3, 4.2, that's the biggest story of the combine. Everybody looking at the upside. But the biggest story to be actually a defensive player, I can honestly say this is going to be a defensive draft. I know Fernando Mendoza, he's the Heisman national champion, greatest story arguably in college football history with the University of Indiana, Indiana Hoosiers coming out of literally nowhere and win the championship over the course of the last 2 years, having one of the biggest turnarounds in college football history. I know that he is in the combine right about now, and he's up in the draft right about now. But I think the biggest story is these defensive players. But what says you guys?
Um, I can start it off. Like I said, I watched a little bit of it, but what I was doing, like what I wasn't watching, I was really able to kind of like keep track of it as far as like NFL, like NFL Network was like I like NFL Network's coverage of the combine is like some of the best is some of the best TV sports wise that we got going on. They always do just a bang up tremendous job as far as like being out there, seeing all the drills, like just everything, and with and kind of participating with it in their own right. The Rich Eisen 40 has basically become somewhat of a yearly kind of royalty like thing that we see every year with the combine. But I was very like a lot of like Sonny Styles, Lorenzo Styles. I think Sonny Styles ran the fastest 40. No, Sonny Styles had the highest vertical for a linebacker 6'3" or taller because I think he had like a 43 and a half vert. Um, let's see what else happened out there. Kenyon Sadiq, Oregon tight end, set a record for fastest 40 for a tight end. Ran a 4.39 from the tight
Mm,
end position, fastest tight end 40 ever.
yeah,
Um, You had like Orville Reese and David Bailey doing. If Orville Reese kind of he kind of solidified himself being arguably the premier edge player coming into this draft. I mean, just so many like interesting stories come out as far as like guys really having killer combines, like the wide receiver from Mississippi State running a 4.26, like just so much going on with combine. And I mean, it's just another step in the evolution of sports and the evolution of the game as far as seeing these these athletes and how it's evolving. And I think for me the story is the offensive line and the evolution as far as like the athlete, as far as like what the offensive linemen are starting to turn into. Like, you know what I'm saying? We weren't really too worried about offensive linemen and like straight line speed or whatnot. Basically, we're worried about your footwork, your hands, being able to play with leverage. I mean, just the basics, the necessities. Now you're like you said, champ, you're seeing guys running it under 5 40, under 5 second 40s. Like, I mean, it's crazy how much more athletic the offensive line position is starting to become. You're starting to see that a little bit in the NFL now, but I think as the game evolves, where we really might be starting to see that too. Like, we might be getting ready to see these guys breaking 4.7. When we might start seeing these guys break 4.7s and 4.8s. Like, we might not be that far off. I think the more these combines start to progress, we're really going to see more of an evolution in terms of certain positions. I think the biggest one is going to be the offensive line. And let me tell you something, when it gets to a point where they're breaking like 4.7s, 4.8s in the 40-yard dash, then it's going to be like a real conversation as far as like how athletic these guys are. But I mean, I just, I've always been a big fan of the NFL Combine. I hate it. I didn't watch it more this year, but I always try to keep track of it because I enjoy this time of the year. I enjoy the Combine. I enjoy the draft. I like seeing these young guys come out and really have a spotlight and have a showcase to really show who they are and what they can bring to the 32 NFL franchises. I enjoy seeing that. I enjoy seeing the future. Like year in and year, I enjoy seeing these guys come from college and really kind of put their name out there, put their flag in the ground, and really kind of show, hey, if you pick me, I can be this for your franchise. I can take you to another level. So I always enjoy it, and just reading the news stories and just seeing everything that's going on. This is definitely the fastest combine I've seen. As far as like, is it up there as far as like the greatest ever? I think there are still some years when you look at the name value with some of these combines in recent years. I think that are still a little better than this year's, but you have to put this year from an athletic standpoint up there with some of the greatest combines we've ever seen.
Yes, indeed. And when you think about linemen running like fast, really, really fast, like the lineman from Iowa, when you literally look back on guys like Tony Mandarich, although he was a draft bust, they were ahead of his time. They were ahead. They were ahead of their time. So I'm sorry.
I was going to make a joke there, but I'm not going to.
Oh, don't do that. We don't need another. We don't need another. Michigan screwed like a NASCAR. All right, we need to chill. But
What?
I never.
I never say anything inappropriate. What are you saying?
Of course you do. That's the point. But yeah. But you really look at guys like Tony Mandarich, who was running a 4.8 back in the late '80s. They were really ahead of their time. I think Tony Mandarich, if I'm not mistaken, ran like a 4.740 when he was weighing in at 300 pounds. Um, One of the best combine workouts that we've ever seen. Tony Mandarich,
Yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot of steroids, though, too.
yeah, 40 time. Let me see. Yeah, he ran a 4.6540 back in 1989. So if you really look at guys like that back then, they were pretty much ahead of their time. And now that we're seeing offensive linemen run a 4.9, the game is getting faster, and the offensive linemen are getting just as quick as the defensive linemen. That's how come I keep saying the quarterback It's not the most important position in the field. It is that offensive line. Because when that
Do
offensive line is not on, your quarterback can't throw in his back, and those running backs can't run through any holes that they don't see or don't have. So yeah,
I'm curious to see. I mean, the NFL Combine and the NFL Draft is always driven by the quarterback every single year, and I mean, I know we have, we got Mendoza and Simpson and Carson Beck and we have some guys, and everybody's all hyped on Mendoza. A lot of people are saying, I've seen, it's weird. I've seen some people say that he's like basically a sure thing, and others are really not that impressed by his tape. I haven't yet to really take a look at it, but I always think, we've seen it before when the quarterback class, isn't all hyped, and sometimes those end up being some of the best. I mean, look at the quarterbacks we're dealing with now. If I look at the Bo Nix and stuff like that, that was a very underrated at the time. There's a lot of raw talent, but not a lot of sure things. Elite prospects. And we got a couple really good quarterbacks out of there. Drake May was part of that draft, and he was uh, again, that was based on just raw, pure talent. We didn't really know a lot. The I'm curious as to how these future generations go. We've seen a lot of talk about to Tom Brady and the lack of development, not just with quarterbacks, but in general with players. And I'm curious to see if that levels out more of a we're going to see more and more parity around the league because of that, and not just team success wise, but talent wise. Our because if you really look at a lot of the newer generation quarterbacks and do a lot of them scream all time greats? And right now, no. But I think that might be a thing going forward. Like how these guys are they going to crack anytime all time greats? And then with the game changing, although you have a lot of there's a lot of transition back to the running game a little bit. We've seen that in the last couple of years with defenses staying smaller. If you look at the linebackers, 6'5", 244 is actually massive for a linebacker. And the fact that Sonny Styles is running that fast that's like safety speed. That's safety corner speed in a 6'5", 240-pound, like 44-pound man. That's like safety speed. That's insane. So I think the athletes are getting far and far more superior, but I wonder if the football IQ is not as good. So I'm just curious to see how these next generations go when it comes to the draft, and I'm really curious about next year. I think next year's draft is going to be phenomenal, and I'm getting way ahead of myself. So I think there's going to be a lot of play with teams that have a ton of draft picks and certain quarterbacks that might be available for trade. I think next year is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. What's his UBR?
I definitely no, I'm definitely I think I just I want to see my biggest takeaway from this is I want to see who goes where as far as like are these teams gonna are they gonna go for BPA? Are they gonna go for best player available? Are they gonna go for fit? I'm definitely gonna be really intrigued with like the first really 2-3 rounds of this year's draft, just because I think at looking at the talent now, it's a lot. I think the talent this year coming into the draft is a lot deeper than even I was anticipating. So I'm definitely I'm eager to see where they go. Like I would say like rounds 1 through 3, seeing the depth. I'm really intrigued. Like we could talk about a guy like Fernando Mendoza, but I kind of like, I want to see somebody I want to see like an Avion Terrell or somebody like a Chris Bell out of Louisville, somebody like a Zachariah Branch out of Georgia, or Skylar Bell out of UConn. Somebody like I want to see where guys like that go as far as like how they fit in these teams' future plans as far as like what kind of depth pieces they're going to become like at the next level. So it's not just necessarily like the big names. It's like I said, it's going to be really, really deep. So I think rounds 2 and 3 are going to be like a real telltale this year as far as like which teams have the best drafts, because I think you're going to be able to get some serious depth. Really, 2 through 4. I think you're going to be able to get some serious depth rounds 2 through 4 this year because of the amount of depth at all positions this year. But and honestly, I'm looking at 2 positions for me as far as like depth. I'm looking at wide receiver and I'm looking at corner. I think there's like some serious depth at both of those positions this year. So I'm really intrigued to see where some of those guys end up and coming up in the draft. That for me is like the biggest intriguing takeaway for me this year.
Do you think it's a lot of? Do you think this is one of those drafts where there's not a lot of top end talent, but it's a lot of depth talent?
Yeah, yeah. There's no standout number one guy when it
No.
comes to the wideouts and the corners, but it's so deep with really good talent. I'm really
Yeah.
intrigued to see where some of these guys go. Yeah, because like there's
These are the
like
drafts.
even with even like someone coming out like a Carnell Tate, who I thought was going to be like the standout guy, but even he isn't really like, he hasn't really separated himself from like a
No.
lot of these receivers. So it's like just it's that's the exciting part of a draft like this. Like there's no one guy that's like, oh, we know he's going in the first round. It's
This is
just
this
it's
is
fun.
where when I was younger and I spent a insane amount of time doing deep dives into drafts. These drafts were my favorite because it really, and this is where GMs are going to make. This is where GMs make their money in drafts like this, where there's not clear front run talent. There's a lot of depth talent, and then it's basically kind of what you said. Are you going for? Or was it Champ that said it? You're going for fit. Can you get a guy that can fit your system and be successful? And I think that's going to be the thing with this. Don't get me wrong, you have your guys, but look at someone like Sadiq out of Oregon, like we were just talking about before. Yeah, he's 6'3", 241, runs a 4.3 40 or whatever, but like he wasn't used like extensively at Oregon. He's still a mystery. There's a lot of athletes in this draft. And I'm curious to see how these athletes translate to the field, and that's what or translate to the next level. That's what I'm most curious about.
All right. Is it just safe to say right about now that Ohio State is NFL U at this point? Have they just overtaken every team?
As I'm gonna say no, and the reason why I say they haven't overtaken it yet, even if they like right now they're projected there, I think people are saying like they could possibly get like 6, 7 first rounders. Even if they get the 7, Alabama is still like right there, like with the 21 first rounders over the past like some odd years or whatnot. Alabama's still there, Georgia's still there, LSU is still putting out talent, Texas is still putting out talent. Even schools like Florida, Tennessee, they're still bringing in talent. Ohio State is among the upper echelons, but to say NFLU, I don't think they're there yet because, like I said, you still have a lot of these schools that are still putting out good talent. Maybe not the number, but still putting out good talent. So I think they're like, in terms of just in terms of upper echelon NFL like factories, I still think it's still like that first tier is still Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. I still think it's that first tier. They're in the first tier, but I don't think they're like NFLU, but they're in that first tier. I think it's those 3 schools, and then every other school is like a tier below them as far as just it's not just like the level of talent that they're pulling out, but the amount of it as well. So they're in that first tier. There's an elite tier, and then there's everybody else.
Okay, then. Anything you got to add, Flash?
No, I think I'm 100% kind of with BRF. I think we have our certain schools. I think, and they're always going to and they're going to dominate for however long they dominate. Right now, it's Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, those are going to be the teams that kind of continue to dominate the first round. That now will that change? Yeah, at some point that will change. But as of right now, it's been that way for a handful of years, and it's going to continue to be that way. A little bit more than a handful of years, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right. First overall pick on the spot, 30 seconds. Well, 1 minute apiece. Who you picking? Sonny or Fernando?
You go first, Flash.
With the first overall pick on the Raiders?
Yeah, who you picking, Fernando? You picking a partner for Max Crosby to have a dominant defense, or you picking a quarterback?
I'm going to probably get some hate for this, but I'm going with the linebacker. I'm going with Sonny. I'm not as high on Fernando. As a franchise. Here's the other part of it too. I know if you have your guy, you go get your guy. I get that whole thing. If you believe he's a franchise guy, you go get him. But with the next crop of quarterbacks coming out next year, I don't think the Raiders are going to be much better than they are now. I think you go get the stud defensive linebacker and add to that defense, and then you go get your quarterback next year. That's just my opinion. Not to mention, there's already smelly rumors right now that Joe Burrow might be up for grabs next year. So that's what I would do. I call me crazy, but that's where I would go.
BRF.
I think we've heard that of. If I'm the Raiders, if I'm convinced that Fernando Mendoza is the guy that's going to lead you in the future, you go ahead and take him. I think from a talent perspective, I definitely think Sonny Styles solidified himself as the best prospect in this draft. I think he for sure solidified that. I think he's the best prospect coming out, and that's a draft with Jeremiah Love in it, Carnell Tate, all these guys in it. I think Sonny Styles solidified himself as the guy, the best prospect. But I think you don't. I think you have to take Mendoza just from the standpoint of there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks coming out next year. Yeah, Joe Burrow might be available. Do you really have? If I'm the Raiders, I don't know if you necessarily have the patience to wait to take that chance, because the quarterback is that. I think out of all the positions in the league, the quarterback is that one. You nail it, you're set for the next decade. You miss, that's 5 years back in the hole. I think if I'm the Raiders, to be completely honest with you, I trade back.
That's kind of my point.
I trade back. I think the Raiders have a lot of holes on that team that I don't think a quarterback can just solve everything. And I don't think Sonny Styles can solve it either by himself. I think you trade back, you build up that draft capital, and you just rebuild that. You rebuild your depth chart. I think that's what you do if you're the Vegas Raiders. I think you trade back.
Do you think there's a team right now? I know the Jets have 3 first-round draft picks, I think, next year. I'd have to look at the draft order, but let's see.
Is there a team that should be willing to make that jump?
Well, that's kind of my point. The Jets are at 2, so you're not going to get the haul that you want.
Right.
Arizona at 3. Tennessee's not going to get a thing. The Giants don't need a quarterback. Cleveland. There's Cleveland. Washington doesn't want a quarterback. New Orleans, they need one.
Nah. I like how Tyler Shuck played last year. If I'm New Orleans, I'm not doing that. You give Tyler Shuck a chance.
Over. Yeah, okay.
You give Tyler Shuck a chance.
You got Miami at 11.
They're a team I can see doing it.
Yeah, because they about to release Tua.
They about to get rid of Tua.
Yeah.
Miami's a team I can see doing that.
They about to
Oh,
release.
and that would be oh God, Miami. If they got up to the number 1 overall pick and drafted Fernando Mendoza, who is from that, that makes a lot of sense.
I think that's a far jump, 11-1,
That is a jump, but
because you're going to have to leapfrog the Jets.
yeah,
You will have to.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. And the Jets having 3 1s, that's a tall task.
Well, that's my thing. Is if you're the Raiders, here's the thing. Let's say you're okay. Let's BRF. You're the Raiders. I'm the Jets. I come to you. I go, look, we'll swap picks, and I'll give you an extra 1 and a 2, and you still can get to you still get Sonny.
If I can still get Sonny, I'd do it.
Well, you would. You'd be at number 2.
Yeah, you'd be able to get Sonny. You'd be able to get Sonny because they're trading up to get Fernando Mendoza. So yeah, I do it because I'm getting Sonny.
And then you get an extra 1 next year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Then you possibly get your quarterback next year. I do it.
That's if I'm the Jets and you really want a quarterback and you're at 2 and you think Mendoza's the guy, and that Jets roster it's talented. It's got some talent, but it's not what it was a year or 2 years ago. If you add Mendoza to that, you're the Raiders again. You drop back, you get Sonny, you get an extra first round draft pick, maybe a 2 out of it.
Mm-hmm. You have to really consider that. If I'm the Raiders, you have to really consider that.
If I'm the Raiders, that's what I do. I don't unless you can get a bigger haul, but I think the Raiders. I preach this all the time. It's just patience. You're not going to turn this around overnight. It does happen with the Patriots. Patriots drafted, but again, that wasn't overnight either. I think that wasn't. They've spent. It's not like they were doing great after Brady left. I mean, they had Cam that 1 year and they were okay, but they've been kind of not good for a handful of years. So I think the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders just need some talent. The Raiders have always had talent as an organization. They need a cultural rebuild, a slow, kind of in the way that the Detroit Lions did it. Just slowly get. All of a sudden 1 year, like, oh shit, this is a team. Holy crap! And so I'm sure the Raiders are doing their due diligence, but I would trade back, get Sonny, get a couple extra draft picks, especially if you get another 1 out of the Jets. Or if they really want Mendoza, see what you can get out of the Jets in general. Maybe you can get more out of them. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, teams are always thirsty. They thirsting like nerds for IG models when it comes to quarterbacks. I'm just going to be real. So when it comes to quarterbacks, teams are always willing to give up that form. They're willing to give up the crops, and they're willing to give up everything in order to get a quarterback, no matter what it takes. So if I'm the Oakland Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, or the Iowa Raiders or whatever they call today, they might change it soon again. I'm looking to trade that pick. I'll trade that pick, and then we'll go from there. So
yeah,
that's what I'm looking. Defense. Is it wise to go pure defense? I think we just covered this, but let's just go over it again. Is it wise to just go pure defense this draft rather than a skill position player this draft? It's like is this the draft? If you're going to draft a defensive player, it's like this the draft to do
it. I think in the aspect of to talk about BRF said, if you want to create depth on your defense, yes, and don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot of athletes in this in this draft that again, some of these guys may hit and then you get something that we didn't expect, but I would I go defense heavy in this draft? Yeah, I would. I would a lot. If you're looking for like pure offensive talent, next year is going to be one of those crazy first rounds next year, I think. But I go pure defense. That's why, like, if I'm the Raiders, man, I load up that. This is kind of my point. If you're the Raiders, you trade back and you load up that defense a little bit, and then you draft your quarterback next year and you put him in a good position. That's my thing. I think I think BRF's right. You trade back, you garner draft picks, you build your defense, and you go into next year and you get a quarterback and some skill players. Then you got a team all of a sudden. So
yeah, like if you can, like let's say you're the Raiders and you know you're trying to do all you can to convince Max Crosby to stay. If you load up, say, even if you don't get, even let's say you get Sonny, and then let's say you have an extra first. Let's say you get somebody like his brother, or you get someone like Avion Terrell, or you get someone like Arvell Reese, if you really want to load down on pass rush, or someone like a David Bailey out of Texas Tech, who showed out in the combine himself. Like, yeah, if you're trying to convince Max Crosby to stay, yeah, if you're a team like Vegas, yeah, because here's my thing though, I still think there's enough offensive talent this year to where if you're a team and you need that side of the ball to attack, you can attack the offensive side of the ball this year. Because I think there's enough talent offensively, whether it's running back or wide receiver or the offensive line. I think there's enough talent there that you can load up. But I think this is like another year where it's like kind of like what we did in the draft last year. God, even though James Pierce Jr. didn't work out, you still got Jalen Walker, you still got Billy Bowman, you still got Xavier Watts. I mean, that's still 3 hits. That's 3 hits. I mean, so if you're a team trying to convince Max Crosby to stay and you bring him some help on that defensive side of the ball, that goes a long way in keeping him and convincing him to stay if you get him some help. So let me tell you something. If I'm Max Crosby, if I'm the Raiders and I can land a Sonny Styles to pair him with Max Crosby, that's, man, come on, man. Even if it's not Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese is a really good talented edge. You bring him in, Arvell Reese is like in that top tier of defensive players too. So it's not like it's that big a drop off from Sonny Styles to Arvell Reese. It's not that big a drop off. I mean, they're on the same. They were on the same defense. So I mean, it's not that big a drop.
Hey, speaking of first round picks and the offseason, we always know that the Cowboys are always full of drama during the offseason. But for some reason this year, they're getting ahead of everything. So with George Pickens, they just franchise tagged him. They just freed over $66 million in cap space. They have 2 first round picks. Is this Dallas's chance in order to make a run over the course of the next? Can this be the beginning of a Dallas run over the course of the next few years?
I've been one of the few people that have not been a Cowboy hater, or at least what they've been trying to do. I mean, you free up over $66 million cap. You got 2. I thought the trade that they've been making. I was the one that supported the Parsons trade. Me and PSP got no famous argument over it over on the show. I like what they're doing. I think the fact that they're able to kind of retool this instead of completely blowing it up is kind of impressive, actually. I'm curious what they do to see what they do with George Pickens. Do they actually, do they actually give him a long-term deal, or don't they? That's a lot of money to be sinking into two top-tier draft picks or 2 top-tier wide receivers. We've seen kind of how that's looking for Cincinnati right now. But right now, they're probably they're right now probably the top team that's kind of sniffing around Max Crosby. We brought that up a little bit earlier on what's going on there with the Raiders and him. The trades that they made for Parsons and everything, it's looked like it's worked out so far. So I kind of want to see how this draft goes. But yeah, I I mean, I know you're the Cowboys until you're the Cowboys, but I don't know. I kind of like what they're doing. Could they make a run? Maybe. Because I mean, I look at Washington. I wasn't impressed with Washington last year. I know Jaden Daniels has hurt a lot last year, but I really wasn't impressed with the team overall last year. They regressed a lot. Philly, obviously they didn't repeat and go back, and I think they're kind of regressing a little bit. You still have all that drama in the locker room. And the Giants, Scoots is coming off a major knee injury, and they still have a lot of building to do. Now they got a whole new coach. They got John Harbaugh. So I don't know. There's a chance here for Dallas to do some damage in that division right now.
Okay. BRF.
If they're gonna make noise, I mean, at least if there's a year for them to make noise, it's definitely this year. I mean, they have cap space, they have draft capital. I mean, if they're gonna do it, this is the year to do it. I personally think they did the right thing, franchising George Pickens. Granted, you're giving him a bunch of money, but I think it's the right thing to do. 27.3, basically right at 27.3 million. 1 year. Okay, you did it this year. Can you do it again? And we know when we know it's 1 year, we ain't got to pay you yet. Do it again. Can you do what you did last year? Can you do it again? I like that. But then at the same time, with that kind of money that you have, there's going to be defensive free. There are free agents out there to be had defensively. I hope if I'm hoping what I want to see with the Cowboys is I want to see Jerry Jones kind of push the ego to a side a little bit and understand where his defense is, understand how bad it is and how much he needs to attack, and really, really get some much needed defensive players, much needed players on that side of the ball. I don't always trust him, but I'm gonna give him a shot this offseason because I mean it's not like he can't. It's not like there's not going to be anybody available to do it. There are going to be pieces available to do it, whether through trade or through free agency. So I'm definitely giving Cincinnati the ring. See what they're willing to do for Trey Hendrickson. I'm definitely giving them a ring. I mean, even though we just talked about Max Crosby with the Raiders and what I feel like they need to do to keep him there, you better get him on the phone too. See what they're willing to listen to. I mean, they hold a lot of cards because they have money and because they have draft capital. They have lanes to attack this. Will they be able to do it and make the best decisions necessary for this team to get better? Because we saw Philadelphia last year. I mean, is Philadelphia still a more talented team than Dallas? Yes, but as we saw last year, talent doesn't always do it. I mean, they don't always do it if everything's not rolling in place. And I feel like in Philly's case, the coaching kind of, particularly that offensive coordinator, he wasn't that good last year. So I think Dallas, Dallas can really at the very least get one of those 3 wildcard spots if they just make moves that make sense, that make this team better. They can at the very least get one of those 3 wildcard spots, if not contend for the division. Because I don't think it's not a foregone conclusion that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win the East next year. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. You got to go out there and you got to spend money. You got to make moves that make sense. And I think the division. I can't believe I'm saying this from the Dallas Cowboys perspective, but I think the division is actually there to be had for 2026 if they just, they bring in the right people. Jerry Jones is just one of those guys, but we'll see if he puts that ego to the side and understand what it truly takes to win. I mean, yeah, you got some offensive talent on that side of the ball, but you ain't getting nowhere if you do not improve that defense.
All right. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Kyler Murray. Who should get him, the Vikings or the Colts?
Neither.
I think the Vikings should take a shot at him. I don't think they're really McCarthy has been injured for the last 24 games. He's been injured for the last 24 games. I know people are going to preach patience, but how long are these great defensive players that you have are going to be there? How long is Justin Jefferson willing to wait? Although he has been an ideal teammate. And you got to ask yourself, how available is guys like Jordan Addison and the tight end that they have? How available is he going to be going into the future? And we saw what you could do with a comparable quarterback. And how does that play into your psyche at this point, where you went from 14-3 to 8-9? So I really think the Vikings, they have been known to have reclamation projects for teams. I really believe that. They have been known to have reclamation projects and quarterbacks. Matter of fact, they've only had like 2 quarterbacks that they've really truly developed. And that was Fran Tarkenton and Dante Culpepper. Other than that, those guys either came to them or they were free agents or something of that nature. There was never a situation where they developed these quarterbacks. They were either on 1-year deals, or you think about Jeff George, Rich Gannon. When you think about a lot of those guys, they didn't really get drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. They were either cast off, they were sent there, etc. But when you really look at it, put it in perspective, you have a chance in order to win. You're a quarterback away. And do you want to waste the prime of this defense? Because if you really look at it, Brian Flores, although he didn't get a head coaching job this year, how many times is he going to get passed up by the NFL for a head coaching job before teams say, okay, we really got to take this guy serious? How many times? You got to ask yourself how long these great defensive players are going to be available. How long is Justin Jefferson willing to wait?
I don't. So right now, Justin Jefferson, from everything that I've read and seen, it he's a JJ McCarthy backer. I know they've been practicing together, so they've been doing their thing together. You're going to hear from me. I'm going to preach patience with McCarthy. If I'm the Colts, why wouldn't you go back to Daniel Jones? He's supposed to be healthy by the start of the year. You were a bona fide playoff team with Daniel Jones at the quarterback. Why wouldn't you go back to it? That makes no sense to me. Now, here's the other team. Why aren't we talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers? I know everybody's concentrated on Aaron Rodgers, but I mean, it's the obvious one with McCarthy there. But if you're the Steelers, why wouldn't you sniff around Kyler Murray? Here's another idea. Champ, I know you and PSP saw. I saw. I didn't get to listen to it, but I saw you brought up. I saw the comments about CJ Stroud. If you're the Texans, why don't you bring in Kyler Murray just to push Stroud? Bring him in on a cheap deal. Bring in another first-round talent to kind of push him and see what happens. Like I think there are better situations for Kyler Murray. I think McCarthy, again, I think you preach that. I think the Vikings are Colts are kind of am I wrong in the Daniel Jones thing?
I really believe that they should really be looking out for the future, because I don't know how ready he's going to be coming back off of the Achilles.
It says he's supposed to be fine with at the start of the year.
Yeah, but that's an Achilles. I'm not really for certain. And I'm not willing to take that chance.
But I'm not willing to take that chance with a Kyler Murray either.
Yeah.
Kyler, I get where you're coming from, but Kyler Murray to me is not worth, even though Daniel Jones had the Achilles, Kyler Murray is not the type of a name to push Daniel Jones out the way when you consider what he was doing before he got hurt. I'm not pushing Daniel Jones out the way for Kyler Murray.
No, I don't. I just don't I think the perfect place for Kyler Murray is Houston. That's my thing. I think you go to Houston, you get a shot to you just push CJ Stroud, or you get to sit for a little bit, kind of get your your kind of shit together. What about the Rams? You got Matt Stafford. Like he's you're not going to replace Matt Stafford, but at some point that dude's going to retire.
Exactly.
If I'm Kyler Murray, we've seen a couple quarterbacks, going under McVay and come out and they're better quarterbacks after that. To me, that's a better, because if you go, let's say he signs with the Vikings or the Colts, there's expectations now. You go and sign with Pittsburgh, there's high he's going to start in Pittsburgh if they don't sign Aaron Rodgers. Like then there's high expectations. If I'm Kyler Murray, I do the reclamation project signing. You do what Malik, I know Malik Willis was traded to Green Bay, but essentially the same thing. You go, you learn, you sit, you play when the starter is injured, and you kind of redeem yourself. Then you walk into another big contract if you prove your worth. So, like, I'm going there. I'm going, let's see. I'm going to kind of shifting through some of the teams. You could go. I mean, Miami. There's not a lot of expectations, but you could go there.
Yeah.
They're not going to have anybody. But if I'm Miami, I don't sign him. Why don't you go to Kansas City and sit on your ass for a while behind Mahomes? There's just a lot of places that he could go that I think he would succeed better at. That would be that's the thing that I if you don't chase the money or necessarily the starting position. Go to the place where you are likely going to succeed or put yourself in the best position to succeed. And honestly, I think the two best places for that, I think honestly, I think are Houston or the Rams. I think those are my two big things. Especially the Rams. If I'm him, I go to the Rams. Go, hey, can you give me? I'll come here for free. Not really, but I'll come here for free. I'll back up the MVP, and then Stafford gets hurt, and I got to get into a couple games. Let's see what happens. Like I don't know. That's what I would do.
Yeah, like Mac Jones.
Yeah, like Mac Jones, exactly.
Yeah,
that's another thing. Like if Mac Jones gets traded, why don't you go to San Francisco? That's the situation I would go to. That's what I would do if I'm Kyler Murray. I think that's the best place, the best thing to do for him so he succeeds. Because the kid's got the talent. He's just got to put down the video game controllers.
Yeah, got to put down the video game controllers. Hey man, I'm gonna just be real. I wouldn't give a damn about no video games if I'm making millions of dollars. My only thing would be is to be dedicated to my craft at that point, because I'm gonna just be real. Here's what my mom used to say when my mom and my dad. I had to give them both credit for that. Here's what they both used to say when I said, because I used to love playing the game before I go to school. I used to love playing video games, like play around the NBA jams, play Streets of Rage, put on my clothes, sit down, play Streets of Rage. And mom said, why don't you go to the table and read for a minute and read for the next 30 minutes before you go to school? She said, because you got to realize those video game developers, they got their money. And the craziest thing about those video game developers, you don't know how much they got. So I think that the biggest bonus that Ed Boon had got when he was working for Midway, I think was like $20 million. Mortal Kombat had came out. So those guys were making bank. So those guys got their money, especially if you have a series like Call of Duty that's going to be here always. There's always going to be an appetite. So, hey, they got their money. You need to go ahead and do your best in order to keep yours. And if they cut you, how much of that money are you going to be able to keep? And how motivated are you going to be able to say, hey, I'm here to prove everybody wrong that I can play, that I am coachable, and that I can do some things. Because how motivated are you going to be? Because remember, Russell Wilson, although he got cut, he was motivated in order to go somewhere and do some things. And he's still that motivated. And he's still motivated to go keep playing and show what he can do. How motivated are you going to be in order to prove everybody wrong to say, I can still play? Although we know you're going to get that money. How motivated are you going to be? So it's a big question, because guess what? I think a lot of boxing guys it sums it up in one big question. How motivated are you going to be when you're in the house in the heat wearing silk underwear? So, yeah, how motivated are you going to be, and how coachable are you going to be? And because the verdict's out on you at this point, because we saw what Cliff Kingsbury is able to do with a cooperative quarterback. That's another verdict that's out on you. Now that we're able to see what somebody has able to do with a cooperative quarterback, how are you going to be able to bounce back from that? With you being an MVP candidate at one point in your career, with you being a two-time Pro Bowler, there's a lot of questions to be asked about Kyler.
Yeah.
And will Kyler and Cheetah end up in the same place? Because where do you guys think Cheetah's going?
I think if I'm Tyreek Hill, like I'm okay. If I'm looking at fit, what would make the most sense as far as unlocking an offense even more if he's healthy? Flash, I'm looking at your Packers. I'm looking at your Packers. Yes, you might not want to hear it, but yes, it would make sense. I'm looking at the Chargers. I think the Chargers would be a good fit for him. Champs kind of convinced me on that. The LA Chargers would be a good fit. Everybody's gonna say just go back to Kansas City, go back with Mahomes. I think they need to fix that offensive line like first before they do anything else skill position wise. And I think they could get, I think there are other pieces that they can get. I don't see that's the biggest thing with Tyreek Hill. It's not just it's you're getting the talent, but it's the baggage, and I get that. But like I think the biggest thing is, are you getting a healthy Tyreek Hill? Because if you're getting a Tyreek Hill that's back 100%, ready to roll, he's better than any receiver Green Bay's got. He's better than any receiver the LA Chargers got. He's better than a lot of receivers in the league if he's back 100%. It's just a matter of finding the fit. And just if I was to single out one team right now where he should go, probably the LA Chargers. I think the LA Chargers would probably be the best place for him to go. Because you got a guy with a big arm like Herbert, who that's the thing with a guy with the speed of Tyreek Hill when he's healthy. It's a matter of not, it's basically like not outrunning the quarterback's arm. And with a guy with an arm like Justin Herbert, you're not going to be able to outrun his arm. So, like you have like that. I could see a big three there with Herbert and Tyreek Hill and Omarion Hampton coming back healthy, and then after that you have a guy in Rondé Gatson II who's coming along as a pretty good tight end as long as they use him properly. And then you hope to get those two bookend those tackles back and Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. I think for me with Tyreek Hill, I think it's the LA Chargers. I think that's where he should go.
Well, Buffalo.
Oh yeah.
To me, Buffalo would be the fit. We saw this year that Allen struggled with and you talk about one of the best. He ain't gonna outrun Josh Allen's arm for sure. I don't want him in Green Bay. Go away. I don't need him trolling the bars for his 84th kid in Green Bay. Sorry, you can go do that somewhere else. I think to me it's Buffalo or Kansas City. I think those are the two obvious teams. I like the Chargers. I think that fits as well. But I think I like him going to Buffalo. I think that would be actually a decent fit. I think Buffalo is the place he goes. Other than that, I honestly don't. Besides Buffalo, the Chargers, and Kansas City, like I'm looking at the list of teams. Where else would you go? The Raiders?
No. You ain't got nobody. Nobody's there worth anything throwing him the ball.
No, I mean I don't think San Francisco would want him, or Houston. Rams don't want him. Denver?
No, I don't think.
Nah.
Alex Sean Payton's going to put up with that.
Him and Sean Payton would not mesh.
They would not get along.
No, I don't. We know you mentioned my Packers. What about the Patriots?
If it was Bill Belichick back in his heyday, yes. But I don't think that you got to have somebody
We
who
have, I mean,
you got to have
how
somebody
much
with
is
that.
it, like
If
Tyreek
I'm
Liner?
if I'm the Patriots, I'm calling Philly. What you willing to do for AJ?
They at the
Yeah,
actual.
I am too. I'm trying to find fits, and
It's a fit because
the fit.
Tyreek Hill is basically AJ, just not as big and not as tall. It's pretty much what he is.
Yeah, a lot of people. Everybody concentrate on Hill's speed, but they don't realize how strong he is.
He's a tank. He's hard to
Yeah.
tackle.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's Steven
so,
Seagal. He hard to kill.
yeah. Um. So but you're right. I think the trade. I think the Patriots and AJ Brown is a real thing. I don't whether that happens or not. We'll see. But I think that's about. I think that's the destination for him. There's so much smoke around that if he does get traded, I think that's where he goes. But I don't know, man. I like him in Buffalo. I think that's where he ends up. I think that's that's my thing.
I think from a stability standpoint, I I would actually probably lean. Oh, yeah. I think from a stability standpoint, yeah. I like the Buffalo fit because granted, you have a new head coach, but at the same time, Joe Brady's been there. I mean, Joe Brady's been there. That's basically his offense. You're still running.
Yep.
So I mean, even though he's a new head coach, there's still stability there because he's been there. So yeah.
And I love the fit with Josh Allen, honestly. You know, I don't know. I think it's Buffalo or Kansas City. I think those are the two obvious. To me, those are the two places that he goes. I still think Kansas City's the front runner on him. I just because their offense struggled last year. They're having problems. He's familiar. You know, it makes too much sense almost. That's my thing.
And can you imagine that three of Tyreek Hill, Hollywood Brown, and Xavier Worthy? Jesus, how do you cover all that?
Yeah,
That is so much damn speed. How do you cover all that?
Doom is revived.
Yeah.
yeah. I think that to not to go off on a tangent on Kansas City. I think that's a lot of speed to be troubled with, but I also think that their offensive problems run deeper than just talent. I think they just have. I think Kelsey aging the offensive line, and I think watching Mahomes over the last 2 years, even though they won that Super Bowl, that was really knowing how to win types of winning close games and the refs. I had to throw that in there. I think their issues run a little deeper than just getting talent. Because I think they have a lot of talent at wide receiver right now.
They do. No, I mean they really do.
With Rashid Rice and
Rashid Rice. You have Hollywood. You have Xavier Worthy.
I would get rid of Rashid Rice, bro. I would get rid of him. You got
didn't he just get in trouble again for something stupid?
Right, that dude like NWA, he always into something. I don't know what that dude's problem is because you fail. The thing is, you would think you would keep your nose clean because you fell in the draft to the second round. You're supposed to be a first round pick. You fell in the draft to the first round. First off season you get in some shit. Second off season you get in some shit. Not only that, you haven't been available. You got injured the first couple weeks. Unavailability, you're getting in trouble every off season. What good are you at this point? You got to get the hell out of my building. I'm not having that. I'm not having it. So at this point, look, I have a lot. The reason why I say Tyreek Hill should probably revisit Kansas City, number one, because I know he's not going to act a fool out there. I know that Eric Bieniemy coming back, not to mention Andy Reid being there, he's going to be in check. And look, when you go back home with mom and dad, you want to be disciplined because you don't want to be disappointed. And so with NWA always into something that being Rashid Rice is concerned, I got to get him up out of here. You need to go seek your fortunes somewhere else. I don't know what's going to happen with him and James Pierce in their futures, but those two guys are arguably the most talented and the most troubled guys in the NFL at this point. Talented, but just troubled as hell. And you need to go see about getting yourself done, see about getting the help that you need so that you don't end up in the penitentiary at this point. Because every single offseason, you're in something. And I just cannot have that if you are going to be on this team. This is more than just a team now. This is a brand. Whenever you're starting to win Super Bowls, you're becoming more of a brand. And if people are always seeing you in some shit, then guess what? They don't want to. Look, that dude always in trouble. I want to cheer for that damn team. So yeah, you got to get your ass up out of here. I don't care who, because like I said, you can't keep getting in trouble. I mean, and it's not just one off season. If it was one off season and it's just a one off type of thing, then okay, I feel you. But every damn year you in some shit, nah, I'm good. Get out. This is a business at the end of the day, and this is a brand at the end of the day. And if you can't maintain what's good for business and the brand, you got to get the hell out of here. I can't have you in here getting in trouble every day. And that's just the bottom line.
Make good points. Make good points.
Yeah, man. Look, you got to want to look. I understand we live in the era of player empowerment. I understand we live in the era of empowerment in general. But at some point, you have to ask, how can we keep this empowerment and maintain order? You have to have some type of damn order. You have to have order. And you've seen what happened when Tyreek Hill doesn't respect someone. Notice he wasn't acting a fool out there in Kansas City. He wasn't getting arrested. He wasn't doing all that nonsense. He gets to Miami, wheels fall off. Although he have a productive season, nobody really respected it, Mike McDaniels. So it has to be this balance of order and balance of chaos. And if you can't have a balance of that along with player empowerment, then your Raiders are going to eventually suffer, and you're going to end up like the NBA is. Because right now, all the player empowerment is like it's no order. The future of the NBA is in jeopardy at this point because the two guys that were expected in order to lead them into the stratosphere for the next millennia, they're constantly in some trouble about something. Look at Ja Morant. Look at Zion Williams. Those were supposed to be the guys. Boom. There's no legitimate face of the NBA at this point that you can have that squeaky clean. You really got to pull something out of your ass in order for you to hate them.
No, I think the face.
No, hear me out. When you had Michael Jordan, you literally had to go pull something out of your ass in order to hate him.
Yeah, but you got to remember the media was way different back then.
No, and then, yeah, you had to pull something out of your ass in order to hate him. Then when the books came out, even after that, people was like, okay, they're pulling stuff out of their ass in order to hate him. Magic and Bird, you had to pull something out of your ass in order to hate him.
Yeah,
and then LeBron, although I have my reservations about him at certain points, you know how fickle he is at times, how picky he is at times. At the end of the day, he's never in trouble. I think the only thing he ever got in trouble with off the court was as far as, with the police or with anybody, as far as the law is concerned, is the speeding ticket that he had in Cleveland. That was the only thing you heard about it.
Throw away the key.
Huh?
Throw away the key. Stupid. He can't be speeding around them children.
He was speeding. But that's the thing. You need a guy that every American can say, okay, that's the face and have no problem with.
Now, wait, are you talking about just American players? Because I don't think that those two guys were ever going to be close to the face of the league. I think the faces of the league are your guys like, they're all foreign players. Giannis, Luka.
John Morant had a legit shot before he got into all the trouble.
Yeah.
John Morant had a legit shot.
But
before he started
getting in trouble, he did because you could gravitate to him. He had the smile, he had the way he played in Memphis. Like everything just gravitated to them toward in such a positive way. There was no definitive, even in places like Boston or the Lakers and all the blue blood, the Knicks, the places like that. They even with like a guy like Tatum or something like that. A lot of people didn't feel like Jason Tatum was like that. Jason Tatum was not more marketable than John Morant when you look at personalities and how they played and all that other stuff. So John Morant legit had a shot. People were talking about him in terms of face of the league conversations. He was in them. He just messed himself up at the end of the day.
Yeah, he was in the mix. I think the NBA's problems right now are far deeper than just they don't have a face of the league guy. I think they have a lot of problems that, for years we've been giving a lot of shit to Roger Goodell as a commissioner. Well, I don't know. I think the NBA's just got way deeper problems than that. I think they have a bad product, and I think they have the inmates run the asylum problem. So, I think I think you talk about LeBron, champ. I don't think it has anything about him doing off the field stuff, but that's another thing that I saw you and PSP talking about. Did LeBron ruin the All-Star game or the dunk contest or a lot of other things? Like I think that's the ambassadors for the game aren't good.
He did not ruin the dunk contest.
I don't think he ruined it, but I think he set him and Kobe set a precedent.
At the end of the day, what's ruining the dunk contest is like the creativity's gone, because just about everything you can do, you've done.
I know, but you still okay. But here's the thing, though: like you still want to see, like when the dunk contest was the thing, like the top stars were in it. Like that was what made it fun, just like the All-Star game and seeing like there's that famous story about Kobe going at LeBron, going like, "Come on, man, let's go," and he just withers into a whatever. And I think the lack of competitiveness in those aspects, are some of the things that have played into the downplay of the end or the downturn of the NBA right now, and the lack of views and the problems that they're having. I'm not saying he's solely to blame. I just think their ambassadors as a whole have done a great job. Like Steph Curry should be in the 3-point shooting contest like every year. Same thing. Like, why isn't Steph Curry in the 3-point? Like, you want the best of the best in those situations. That's why.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but even still, Mike only did the dunk, and he did it 2-3 times. It's not like he was in it like he did it like a bunch of times.
No, but at the time, like, I mean, what do we remember for the dunk? I mean, like, we remember the two best people going at it, Dominique and
of course,
top players in the league. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying I should take that back. Not every year, but like,
Look, do I think he should have done it at least once or twice? Absolutely.
Yeah, like I think him and Kobe should have done it. We never got a Kobe LeBron finals. We could have gotten a Kobe LeBron dunk contest at least for fun. It's supposed to be at the least not just competitive but fun. Like that's what that weekend and that kind of stuff is supposed to be for the fans. That's that's the thing. So that's my thing. I know we kind of went off on a took a left turn at Albuquerque here, but
all right. Let's shift from football to the hardwood. No pun intended. The WNBA, the CBA, it has to be signed by the players and the owners by the 10th. Hopefully it does. But something monumental happened this past week. They generated enough money for revenue sharing, and the teams within itself, the players from the teams in excess, got over $100 million in profit sharing. It was like $8 million a team for profit sharings. I think that was like over $100. Yeah, that was over $100 million, and it was $104 million to be precise. and then they had the revenue sharing for the licenses agreement, and the teams got $9 million apiece for that. So with that being said, they were able to generate a profit. Not to mention, remember, the face of the league, she was not active for the majority of the year in Caitlin Clark. Should that be more motivation for the commissioner, and everybody else to say, hey, look, we generated enough revenue last year. We don't, the face of our product that we rallied behind was not here throughout this entire time. She was not there. She's going to be back this year. So you can best believe the damn stands are going to be full as hell if she's healthy. And even with her out, the playoffs were some of the highest ratings that we ever saw. Is it time to just give them their 20% revenue sharing now that they generated it? Because they're not asking for 50% or anything like that. They're asking for 20. They're asking for 20%, maximum 27% from last I checked. This is the time to go ahead and give them their revenue sharing now that they have turned a profit for the first time and was able to get over the $100 million that they needed in order to get there.
I think okay. I think I am sort of talking out of my ass right now when I say this. Okay, so slap me in the face if I'm talking out if I'm wrong on this. I think what the players should be asking for is a progressive piece of the pie, but start lower.
Okay.
Like how low?
I'll say the lowest that I would go is like 18%. And then we generate over that. Next 2 years, 24%. Well, 22%. After that, we generate enough, 24. Then after that, the cap is 30 at this moment until the next collective bargaining agreement. So I can see where Flash is coming from that perspective. So
Because you don't. That's the thing. If you lock in at 20, if the league takes off, you don't want to be locked in at 20.
yeah,
So to me, I would start
Right.
out low. Maybe like I don't know where they're at now with revenue sharing, but like I maybe
they're 9%.
oh then okay. So I'd look at it. I'd say I'd start at 16, depending on how 16 ish, maybe a little high. Like 18 is fine, but I'd say 16 maybe, and have a progressive line. And then depending on how long the CBA is, you know, that's the thing that you want to do. You want a progressive. So I think the players, you know, now this is me not throwing shade at the players, or I don't want them to get what they deserve, but I also want them to kind of like chill out a little bit. Like, you know, you guys had 1 year of like success, and I do think that the point of Caitlin being out most of the year and them still being really successful is a huge feather in their cap, and the league itself. I also think that the league, the executives in the league are not doing this any favors. Now, I mean, I don't think we've ever seen a really good. The only league that we've really seen any kind of like playing together is the NFL. The NFL never really seems to have the Players Association and the NFL seem to be, for the most part, in lockstep. Every collective bargaining agreement. So I don't know. I think the players need. I think both sides need to kind of take a step back a little bit. Like I think the players do need a good piece, but I think the players also need to kind of like, hey, chill a little bit. Like you're still not making buco dollars here as a league. Like you're not there yet. You're on the way there, which is why I think a progressive share would be a better idea of where to go. That's just me.
BRF.
Yeah, for the most part, I do agree with that. You don't want to get too far ahead as far as like what you're asking for, because if you ask for too much now and then you take a step back, then there's no like incentive for the owners to really want to like say, okay, let's give you such and such amount, let's give you this amount. If you take a step back, I think you have to put yourself in a situation where you can progress, you can advance, you can still make net positives. And I think starting low would probably be like, yeah, I say like anywhere from like I'll say in that 15 to 18% range. I would definitely start right there because 9%. 9% is ridiculous. Like 9%, that's it. Like come on, league. Y'all give them a little more than 9%. So I'll say that I'll say 15. I'll say 15 to 18 to kind of start.
And then you want the if the league continues to grow, that's where the progression comes in.
Exactly.
Then it's and then. But then if I'm the players, I only sign like a 5-year deal. I don't go beyond that. Because then if the league keeps growing, then you want to be able to renegotiate in 5 years.
Yeah, you don't want to be locked in like the NFL was for so many years.
Yep.
With Demetrius, with the what's the guy's name? Demetrius. I don't know what his name was. Demetrius.
I know you're talking about. I can't think of his last name, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, you don't want to be locked in a collective bargaining agreement like that, and you don't have the leverage that you need right now. So yeah, that's something that you don't really want at this point in time. But yeah, I really believe that there should be a lot more. There should be a progression. I don't think that they should just say, hey, we're going to settle for this and just not do. But that's just me. But congratulations to the ladies, I would say, not just in the WNBA, but unrivaled. Unrivaled. They had the two most highly attended games in history as far as women's basketball is concerned. One in Philadelphia and the other one tonight. So congratulations to the women of Unrivaled. So special congratulations to them. Anything else you guys would like to add?
Nah, really. I think right now we're kind of in a weird spot with sports right now. Baseball is we're kind of all into spring training right now, which is great. And
I am so ready for the WBC. I am so hyped. I am so excited. I am so excited.
I'm excited for baseball this year. I'm excited for the summer in general.
Man, like, let me tell you something. I've been following the WBC like really since its culmination. I have never in my life seen a United States roster this damn stacked. It's ridiculous how stacked the United States roster is this year. It is crazy. It is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, guys, look, let's call it a night, man. We'll catch y'all next Monday. And look, don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. We're here with you.
Wait, I got one thing to add. So I don't want to make this political. But I do want to say that regardless of how you feel about what's going on in the world right now, I just want to say I hope our troops stay safe, and I wish the best for them, and I hope everybody falls in line with that aspect of it. So that's what I wish for, and that's what I want. I don't want to. I'm not going to try to make this a picking a side or whatever. I just want them to be safe, be strong, and kick some ass. That's it. That's all I want.
Keep your head low to the ground, soldiers.
Yep.
Coming from a former veteran. We love you guys, regardless.
Yep.
Thank y'all. Mm-hmm. Past and present, thank y'all. Especially the present. Salute.
Yeah.
On that note, we'll see y'all next Monday. Holla at a player when you see me in the streets. Ah, yeah!